Police officers of Reddit, what are common knee-jerk reactions when people notice you're there? I once had a cop pull right up beside me on a 2-lane highway. I didn't know if I should make eye contact and maybe give a head nod, or if I should just keep my eyes laser focused straight ahead. I opted for the latter and just kept my eyes on the road. I was only doing the speed limit, so I tried slowing down a few mph to let him go ahead. He slowed down with me. This is when it got weird. It's a pretty dark road and, all of a sudden, the blinding light of 1,000 suns hits me from the side and I quite literally can't see a thing. He turned on his spotlight and put it right into my face. Instinctively, I yell, "What the frick?" As soon as I do, the blues go on and I pull over. The cop runs to my window and screams, "What did you say to me? What did you call me?" I explained that I was just saying what I said because I couldn't see due to his spotlight and I just got really freaked out. He told me that was bulls and kept asking me what I called him. I stayed really calm and just kept repeating that I had no personal issue with him except the light potentially making me crash. He made me sit there for about 15 minutes while he sat in the cruiser. Came back and told me he was cutting me a break and not giving me a citation. Of course, I wanted to remind him I broke no laws but kept my mouth shut. Clearly, the guy had some issues and I just wanted to get the heck away from him. Stop resisting. When I put on my uniform for the first time, I gave myself a fright, catching sight of a cop in the mirror. Putting on a seatbelt. I've never noticed anyone not wearing their belt until they go to put it on. A cop once caught me rocking out a safety dance pretty hardcore when he pulled up next to me at a stoplight. I didn't notice him right away, but when I saw him I jumped and stopped and I'm sure I turned bright red. He thought it was hilarious. You can dance if you want to. I used to provide transportation services to the local coroner. Whenever I arrived in my van, it was amazing what people would do to be there when we removed the body. People decided to do yard work at 10 p.m. at night or sit on the patio and read the paper in the middle of winter. Another thing I would notice was people turning off the house lights so we couldn't tell they were watching at the window. More often than not, people just stood and stared, but it was always interesting what people tried to do to look like they were not watching. Everyone wants to see a corpse. I didn't do IT officer. He's over here. Lololololol. My biggest sigh moment is when someone runs a red light but sees me at the last second, slams on their brakes and stops in the middle of the intersection. Then, they slowly back up, causing a horrible traffic jam. You've already run the red light, and now you're backing illegally on a roadway. Oh, and everyone thinks you're an idiot and looks at me saying if that was me I'd get a ticket. Taking out your phone and pressing record seems to be becoming a lot more common. I hate it when I walk into a room and I'm greeted with, "He did. Him. He's the one you want." I might only be there to use the toilet. I'm not there to introduce a drug dealer's head to the floor. But those jokes were funny, but just once. The other thing is when you chat to people, they can become defensive, evasive and abrupt. Sometimes I wish I could forget about professionalism, drop the crap and say, "Look, help me out here." Not a police officer, but my best friend owns a decommissioned cop car. 2000 Crown Vic in standard police white, and it still has its push bumper and CB antennas. Needless to say, the thing looks like a cop car, a lot. So he gets 3 responses. The one when people think he's a cop. The one where people stare in abject confusion at the long-haired, bearded man with a cigarette and wonder if he's some sort of undercover cop. And the one where people figure out he just owns a cop car and get really mad and drive off. The benefits of it are that typically if you get in the fast lane on a highway, everybody just moves out of your way. The drawbacks are that when you get in the left lane and you aren't on the highway, everybody immediately drops to the speed limit. There's no way to really tell them to speed up. If you pull up close and tailgate them, they just think you're running their plates and slowly drop to 2 below. The other drawback is the 14 miles per gallon and that the rear doors don't open from the inside. The cuff holders are beastly, though. The cuff holders are beastly. 7-Eleven Slurpees. Sometimes I think people believe I won't see them if they avoid eye contact, like a T-Rex or something. In reality, I pay a little more attention to those people. I knew I probably appear really suspicious when I see a police officer. I don't even do anything illegal, but I get so nervous I forget how to act like a normal human. I'm sitting in a living room with 3 cops right now, so I asked. People who slam on their brakes when they see a cruiser sitting on the side of the road and then cause accidents. A ridiculous amount of people start crying. A few people have wet themselves after being pulled over. They also said that it's pretty obvious if someone is deciding to run. Sometimes people get ballsy and flip them off. Sometimes on my way to work on a dual carriageway highway with 2 lanes for each direction of traffic, I come across way more traffic than usual, with the fast lane going just under 70 miles per hour and the slow lane going about 60-65 miles per hour. This signifies one thing to me: a police car. Yep, sure enough, wherever there is a police car driving, there will be a clump of traffic around it, all scared of getting caught speeding. The policemen who go out in the cars must think speeding is really rare or something. What's hilarious is when the cop trolls then by driving like 5 to 10 miles under the limit. The entire highway grinds to a crawl. No one wants to be the guy to pass a cop even when he's driving too slow. I'm just like, limit is 60 here, be and cruise by. There is a certain type of person that feels compelled to tell us about irrelevant suspicious behavior while we are eating. You can spot them when they walk in the door of the restaurant, and their story usually goes like this. Hey sir, can I talk to you? The other night I was in my front yard and I saw a car go by. A little later I saw a cat, which is weird cause it was Tuesday, but then I saw a guy walking with a bottle of water and he didn't even look thirsty. What do you think? I'm social, so I don't mind talking to people while I'm on break, but this guy drives me crazy. Comment from boyfriend who was a cop for 7 years. The first thing anyone would do when they drove past me was look at their speedometer. If on foot, common reactions were looking away or pretending to talk to someone on the phone. But it often doesn't indicate guilt, just nervousness. I always check my speed when near the police just in case, yet I never speed. I always get nervous walking past the police, yet I never know why. Not a cop but applicable story nonetheless. In my early 20s I worked film set security to subsidize my income. One evening I was guarding the empty extras holding space. In other words, sitting there doing nothing other than reading Maxime. A police officer came in and started talking to me at one point. He even commented on the hot chick on the Maxime cover. He was super casual and I was getting more and more freaked out trying to determine what the heck he wanted. Finally I just asked him. He laughed and said, "Nothing man. I'm just frickin' bored," word for word. Turns out he just wanted to hang for a bit. Military security can be the same. Doing my duty for the night, just sitting at a desk really. Airman comes up, M16, M9, standard loadout, just relaxes and chats for a bit, helps them break the monotony. My uncle is a police officer in UK. He says that on the motorway a lot of the traffic police will travel between 60 miles per hour and 65 miles per hour to allow other cars to go past them, because no one wants to drive at freaking 70. When they've overtaken us they can go as fast as they like. He will only pull people over for going over 80 miles per hour. He says the extra 10 miles per hour over the 70 mile per hour limit really makes a difference to congestion. I live in NYC, where you sometimes get randomly searched when entering the subway. Here's my trick for avoiding police scrutiny when I'm carrying weed, sweets, donuts, candy bars, ice cream, whatever. Nobody looks dopier and less threatening than a grown man blissfully stuffing his face with chocolate. As I enter the subway, I take out my Boston cream donut and take a big, gooey bite. I've got chocolate on my face, chocolate on my fingers. The cops just give a disgusted little shake of their heads and let me walk by. Big freaking baby. I can practically hear them thinking. Other than that, like other officers said, no evasive action, no sudden movements, no attempt to avoid the officers. Pretty sure a grown man blissfully stuffing his face with chocolate looks kinda stoned. First of all, I'm a police officer with the Metropolitan Police, London, England. Funny hats, that gig. Yes, I do have a slightly mischievous sense of humor. In the UK I think the practice of using unmarked cars is a lot more common, so that can get very interesting. Quite often if I'm in an unmarked car and I see someone on their mobile phone whilst driving, illegal here, I make gestures for them to put it down, maybe give the horn a little beep to get their attention. It's surprising how often they will stick their finger up at you, at which point I just flick the blue lights on and watch the phone go down so fast, then watch them stopped at the light looking like they wish the ground would swallow them up. People tend to have more of a knee-jerk reaction when they learn what I do for a living. They'll happily be chatting away about the most inane of things when it comes up in conversation and yeah, so, cool, right, usually followed by either a hot fuzz joke or what's the fastest you've ever driven a police car? Not a cop but a friend of mine would run down the street when we were by at a party at my college. When she saw a cop, she was stopped and arrested for underage drinking so many times because of it and could never understand why. Yeah, I've seen people stupidly do that. Just causally walk away. That's what I do, and cops usually don't bother chasing you. It's those stupid kids that get onto a full-on sprint that get pinched with underage drinking. I go to the same gas station pretty regularly, and oftentimes when I'm there at night while wearing street clothes I'll get stopped by someone asking for $1 or some spare change. One night I stopped by there after work, wearing dark pants and a dark shirt with my badge hanging around my neck, and as soon as I step out of my car I hear someone call out to me in the now recognizable "I don't know you but I'm gonna ask you for something" tone. Hey man. A scruffy looking guy walks up to me, eyes a little shifty, and repeats his greeting and starts talking about trying to get home. I see his eyes glance down to my badge and hold for a second and notice brief pause in his speech before he looks me in the eyes and asks, "How's work going?" "Fine, thanks." Alright, right on, anyway, and he goes into a long drawn out story that isn't related to anything at all, but which I assumed was an attempt to build rapport so he felt comfortable asking for a buck. Sounds judgmental, but I always know when someone's about to ask for money. Then all of a sudden he ends with, "Okay man, well you have a good night," and he walks off without asking for a thing. So I guess his knee-jerk reaction was that asking a cop for money would get him in trouble. The funny thing is my badge said party officer because I bought it as a cheap way to dress up for a Halloween party I was working. I am not a cop, but it saved me from telling someone I did not have any cash. Should have arrested him. Obviously he wasn't partying enough. When I was just out and about, people would go out of their way to say hello to me, to a ridiculous extent. Also, when I would get coffee or whatever on the way into work I would sometimes get freebies. I always appreciated the sentiment, but let's be honest, I was threatened with weapons more often when I was a sales clerk than when I was an officer. Overall, people just treated me better, unless, that is, if they were actually entangled in the justice system. I did a lot of courtroom duty, and whenever I would walk through the halls, people would get really quiet and stare at me. It was very surreal at first because in real life, I'm a pretty quiet and unremarkable person. But even though I had a number of violent and troublesome offenders to deal with, I actually think I had it easier than some of my coworkers because I was a woman. I still am. Actually, more often than not, the men would flirt with me and the women would ask me questions about how I ended up in law enforcement. Or they would complain that a certain attractive male officer that I worked with wasn't there. The biggest downside was that I ended up with a couple of guys who were a little too interested in me, but they were already in jail, so I didn't have to worry too much. Most common it seems is when we walk into a store on a call or place to eat. Someone inevitably either does A. raises his hand in the air and says "I didn't do it," ha 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 ha, jabbing whatever friend he's with his elbow, or B. grabs the friend wife he's with and says "Here she is officer, I got him for you." It's only when there's a group of people guy in front of a girl, I usually shrug it off or make a comment about it being the first time I've heard that, in a really sarcastic manner. One time when a guy did the hands up didn't do it maneuver, I made a really serious face, pulled out my cuffs and lunged at him. He started pleading and saying he was just kidding and thoroughly embarrassed himself in front of the friend's girl he was trying to impress with his witty sense of humor. The only thing that seriously irks me is when a parent turns to their child, points at me and tells them if you don't behave they're going to take you away. I scolded a woman for like 5 minutes over trying to scare her kid with the police and basically saying that if the kid ever needs help she's gonna be too scared to go to an officer. Then I gave the kid one of those badge stickers and some candy and tell them to call me anytime they need serious help. I usually keep something like that on me for just such occasions. One time a lady scared their kids so bad they started screaming bloody murder. We usually keep stuffed animals in our trunk for kids involved in traumatic incidents, so I gave her one of those. I'm going to tell my cop friend to start carrying candy because that is awesome. I try to be GGC as often as humanly possible. Unfortunately, here in Australia we have an overburgeoning bogan, see white trash culture with a heavy side of over-entitled opinioned and undereducated people who believe that any and all police interaction with the public instantly constitutes brutality. I can count the scuffles I've had in my time doing this job on a couple of hands and all were justified. 99% of the time, my mouth does all the work and both my partner and I leave without a fight or messy end to most situations. People need to learn to respect all people, regardless of race, color, creed or uniform. If this actually occurred, I'd be a much happier man. Just remember, be excellent to each other and don't be buttholes to the boys in blue. Sorry in advance for the token butt wipe coppers out there. I hate to tar all with the same brush as much as I hate being tarred also. Peace people. I hold my drugs out the window and start masturbating furiously. It's a nervous thing. But officer, I can't pull over any further. I am already pulled over. You've been visited by Professor Papa. You'll ace all your classes this year only if you comment study hard Papa. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check out another video. Or don't. Either way, have a great day you magnificent people.